Welcome to the Married People Podcast, where we help you make marriage real, fun, and simple. Each week, we have honest conversations about one simple thing that can make your marriage better. Because when your marriage is better, everything's better. I'm CJ, and right now, I'm joined by our resident newlywed, Afton.
Hi.
And I'm also joined by our 22-year marriage veteran. He's an author, speaker, and the director of marriedpeople.org, Ted Lowe.
Hey, everybody.
And today on the Married People Podcast, we're talking about a question. We're asking a question that, man, if this might be just the most felt need or felt tension that I have on my life for sure, can I have a great marriage and a great career? And we're all busy. We've all heard the stats, but I'm just going to rattle some off anyway. That
Go ahead.
Americans sleep an average of 5 to 6 hours a night. Americans work more than the English, which I assume is like British people, right?
Yeah. Not just English speaking.
Oh, okay. We work more than the English, the French, way more than Germans, Norwegians, and I guess even more recently, more than the Japanese. And Americans take less vacation. We work longer days. We retire later. And then this stat really kind of caught me off guard. Married men work 5 hours more per week than men who aren't married. And married women work about 2 hours more than women who have never been married. So apparently we're working more now that we're married than when we weren't married.
I don't believe that.
Why?
Because single people, when I was single, I worked like literally all day, every day, all the time because I had nothing to go home to. I didn't even have a dog yet. So I just worked all the time. So it's hard for me to...
You didn't have Hudson to take care of your dog?
No. I wasn't married yet. I was still single.
Man.
I know. So I didn't have a dog until I got a husband.
You're like, I'm going to wait till I get married so that Hudson can take care of him.
Yes. But I feel like as a single... That's surprising me because I feel like single people just have more margin in their schedule to work more. So it's surprising me that married people are working more.
I think maybe sometimes single people might just be like, well, I'm going to get out on Friday, Saturday night more, or get
party
out on a Thursday night and, go to the singles events or, go downtown or whatever. So, they're scrolling through Match.com.
That's true. Right now, I text Hudson. I'm like, what's for dinner? And if he says something I don't want, I'm like, well, I have to work late. So maybe that's why those stats are a little bit off. I'm like, it's not pizza? Oh, I've got to work till later.
But seriously, I mean, we do work so much. We are busier than ever. And, we hear phrases like, oh, work-life balance. And, I mean, that's kind of what we're talking a little bit about today. But really, Ted, when we get down to it, we're talking about marriage and careers. Because when we're talking about growing ourselves in our careers, a lot of times it is at the expense of our family and more specifically our marriages.
Yeah, it really can be. And so I think the struggle is, can you have both? The question is, can you have both? Because I think, we believe we can have it all. And I, to a large degree, believe we can. Can we have a great career and have a great marriage? And we all know people that do. And so that's what we try to do. We try to dive in and talk with people and interview people that we feel like that are not only winning at work, but they're also winning at home. And we've got the opportunity the last few months to interview some incredible people. And so, and one of those is Carey Nieuwhof. And Carey is one of the most productive guys that I know. And he also has one of the best marriages that I know. But as he shared with me, he and his wife, Tony, didn't always have a great marriage. And he says that is because he was so focused on work. So right now, I want you to hear my interview with Carey. But before I do, CJ, can you tell everyone just a little bit more about Carey?
Yeah, Carey not only has a crazy last name.
There's like a million letters in it.
I never spell it right
No.
ever.
Try typing Nieuwhof.
And he's a boy Carey.
A boy Carey?
Yeah, because Carey is also a girl's name. Carey Bradshaw.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
But it's a man Carey.
Yeah,
Man Carey. Man Carey Nieuwhof.
Man Carey Nieuwhof is the lead and founding pastor of Connexus Community Church in Toronto. In addition to pastoring Connexus, he's a blogger, he's a writer, and he often speaks to leaders across North America about families and about leadership.
And about grilling in his backyard.
Grilling in his backyard? How do you know this?
In his big green egg. Well, on Instagram, if you follow him, you get to see his big green egg basically every day. I think he cooks breakfast in it.
Big green egg people are big about posting about
big
it.
fans of Big Green Egg. They should be. They spent a lot of money on that thing.
We need to tell Carey that he needs to add that part to his bio.
I agree.
But Carey is also, in addition to being a green egg, aficionado and a speaker, Carey is the co-author of the book Parenting Beyond Your Capacity and Lasting Impact. 2 really awesome books.
And I'm just curious, Ted, was this the most polite interviewee you've ever had?
Well, he is Canadian, and they are known for being polite, right? He's Carey Nieuwhof, though. So, yeah, he was very polite and very articulate.
So kind. Probably just sipping on his Tim Hortons while he talked to you about marriage. And
He gave you a bottle of maple syrup before you
that he actually has
that he
in his
apologized for as he gave it to you.
Yeah,
Yes.
that he got
sorry I
out of a
didn't
tree
get this
from his
to you
backyard, right? Did you know that Carey, while he's in ministry, and he talks a lot about ministry in this interview, I promise you that his applications are relevant to anyone who wants to be great at what they do while also having a great marriage. Here's my interview with Carey. Hey, I'm so excited today to be with Carey Nieuwhof. Carey is a leadership guru, an expert, a pastor, and just a friend. And it's been so great to watch his transparency, not only in leadership, but also with his own marriage. And on this podcast, one of the things we like to do is look at people that are not only winning at work, they're also winning at home. And Carey and his wife, Tony, have been really transparent about their relationship in good ways and some struggles. And so I'm so excited to have you, Carey. Thanks for being here, man.
Hey, I'm really honored to be on. Thanks, Ted.
Well, one of the things, the theme with you today is, how do you have a great marriage in the midst of leadership? How in the world do you do that, Carey?
That's a great question. A long journey, Ted. So, I didn't always I wasn't always the best husband in the midst of leadership. And I think one of the real temptations for driven people and, for ambitious people, A-type people, is you marry your work. And I definitely was in that camp for a number of years. And still, honestly, that is I love what I do. I absolutely love really have been very few days in my life where I haven't wanted to go to work. Actually, there may have been none. And there's also been very few days where I didn't want to be married. I mean, I married an amazing woman. She's still the love of my life. I miss her like crazy. I'm on a road trip right now where we're recording this, and, I haven't seen her since Thursday of last week, and it's Tuesday, and it's driving me crazy. I really miss her. So, but that said, when you love what you do, it makes it hard. And number 2, you want to really throw a mix into this. You're working for God. So doesn't it just seem unfaithful to work a little less? It does. It can. And so that was a really, I call it the perfect storm. It was like the perfect storm. I love what I do. I love my wife, but I also love God. And that gets really, really confusing because, and I was, always, pretty much for every year I've been in leadership for 22 years, whatever I've been leading has been growing. Or, sometimes not every year is as good as the last year, but you're on this mission. And so you're always trying to scale your leadership and manage more. And it's very, very difficult. And for the early years of my ministry, I just didn't get it right as often as I did get it right. So, it was really challenging. And, it kind of led to a point where 11 years into my ministry, and I'm 22, so halfway through I'm not 22. That would be fun to be 22. Looks like our producer is 22, but anyway, ish. So I'm 22-ish, but anyway, I've been in leadership for 22 years, and halfway through, I burned out. I just hit a wall, and, nothing terrible happened. I didn't have an affair. I didn't quit my job, but I just ran out of energy and passion and just got into that space. And on the other side, I've had to reconstruct my life into a new normal. And in the last 11 years, I think I've done a much better job of managing the tension between leading well in work and leading well at home. So that's sort of the skinny.
I know your story. You and Tony met in law school.
We did.
Take us from there, because you talk a lot about how you guys, you went from law school to parents, and kind of how that impacted, your journey as a couple in terms of busyness.
Yeah, it was a whirlwind, to be honest with you. And I was always like a 2-job kind of guy. Like I always had something on the side. Whether that was in high school, I DJ'd and I worked at a radio station.
You were a DJ, Carey?
Wedding DJ, yeah. Not a cool DJ like they have today. The guy who walked in with a box of records. But that is kind of retro. That really is.
Really
maybe
cool.
that is cooler than I think. So I did that. And law school was no different. I always wanted to go to law school. So we just ended up at this law school in Toronto, Osgood, and I noticed her. She did not notice me. But it was almost one of those like divine moments when I first saw her, and I thought, who is that, and how do I meet her? And I did meet her, and we started dating, maybe a month after. And we kind of, you just know.
Sure.
And she knew, and I knew, and I was maybe 23, and she was 25. She's a couple of years older than me. And, we were old enough to kind of know, I think this is it. So 18 months after we met, we got married.
Wow.
And we probably would have gotten married faster, but we wanted our families to celebrate. So, and there was no need to get married faster. But anyway, 18 months after we met, we got married. And 18 months after we got married, we had our firstborn while we were law students. So that was like, there was this window to have a baby, and sure enough, we had a baby. And, Tony actually finished her final exams and a week later gave birth to our firstborn.
That's impressive.
Yeah.
That is impressive
Good
right
timing.
there.
Thank you, Lord. He came a month early, but still, so it was really, in retrospect, you're young and you're in your 20s, and it all makes sense at the time. And I wouldn't redo it. I mean, I don't see a problem, but that's a lot of pressure. And then shortly after that, I went to seminary. And so I was a student the whole time, which actually gave me a lot of time with my oldest son, Jordan. When I was a student, I even took 6 months off and was stay-at-home, Mr. Mom. So that was fun. And then went to seminary, and halfway through seminary, I was 30 by this point. It was like, okay, we got to get to a church and see if this is going to work. So that we started ministry, and that was 22 years ago. And that's when things got a little crazy because our churches started to grow. I mean, God was really gracious, and we became one of the fastest growing churches in the country in our denomination, and one of the largest, and that whole story. And it was constant change. It was like we outgrew these historic buildings, so we became a portable church, and we merged the 3 congregations. Then we went in a building campaign and opened up a new auditorium, new building. And, through all that, it's just lots and lots of hours. And I didn't know how to handle it. I didn't know how to scale it. And a few years after that, it led to burnout. So, and our church was in good shape, but I wasn't. And, so that's sort of the progression. We had another son, a younger son. They're spaced 4 years. And, parenting is one of the greatest delights I have. And I was just talking to my oldest son today. He gave me a call while I was here on tour, and he was talking about how relaxed he was. And I'm like, I'm way more relaxed than I ever was, but you wish you could get some of those years back. Hindsight's 20/20. And I think, probably the parenting side suffered a little bit less than the marriage side. But as Andy Stanley has said, there's no marriage issues, there's just people issues. So I brought mine in, and Tony brought a couple of hers in. And, it's a hard fit.
Yeah. You guys, I've heard you share before, you guys got to a really tough point, you and Tony, go, I don't know if we're going to make it. If you don't mind, share a little bit of that.
Yeah, I think she probably felt, I don't know whether we're going to make it more than I did. But, I wondered, how are we going to make it? I wanted to make it. And, one of the points she had said to me, and I would have gone a lot earlier looking back on it now, but she had been saying to me for a few years, this is probably maybe 5 years into our ministry, 6 years, 7 years into our ministry, she's like, you got to go see a counselor. And I'm like, I don't go to counselors. I send people to counseling. Young male, arrogance, bravado. And I honestly didn't think I was the problem because I was pretty happy when I was single. Must be somebody else. It wasn't me. And one of the hardest drives of my life was going up to the counselor's office, who was about 45 minutes away, and we went together as a couple. And I remember saying to her, you can go in, but I'm just going to sit here. I'll go to a coffee shop. I'll do whatever. And it was, classic bad husband. And she said, no, you need to come. And it took every bit of strength that I had to get myself out of the car, to walk into the counselor's office, because the counselor was also a colleague, like a guy, pastor who had a degree, a PhD in counseling. And, I went in with a long list of everything that was wrong with Tony, and I left with a long list of everything that was wrong with me.
Wow.
And that was painful, man. But it was the beginning. It was the first little, it got worse before it got better.
Sure.
Because, I'm looking inside, she's looking inside. But, I'd made some innocent but bad associations when I was a kid. I probably am a performance addict, I should say, in the sense that I perceive love, I receive love as performance. In other words, I'm not sure I'm lovable in and of myself, so I'll just be the best, and then you'll love me, right, Ted? Right? You'll be impressed. And that's not a very good dynamic in leadership. It's a terrible dynamic in a family. And so, some of that was, honestly, it sounds so simple, but just coming into the unconditional love of God, things I believed in, like things that I knew. It's not like I had to become a Christian. I was a Christian, but I didn't understand how that stuff really worked at the emotional level. So, I started to get better, and our marriage started to get better. And she had her own issues that she was working on, and she started to get better, and our marriage got better. But it got pretty dark at times, to the point where, date night, we just argued all through date night. And that's the pace of, raising a couple of kids and a busy ministry where, you fall into bed exhausted at night, you get up the next day and it's rinse, lather, repeat. And so, you finally get a night off and it's like, well, I didn't like this. Well, I didn't like that. Well, I didn't like this. Well, I didn't like that. And, we learned, we had to get a lot of learned behaviors in place. And then there were seasons where I'm sure she didn't feel very in love with me. And there were moments, I wouldn't call them seasons, where I didn't feel really, as in love with her as I had. But one of the things I learned in that season is if you're just obedient, your emotions eventually catch up to your obedience. That if you can stick through it, you can get to the root. I absolutely love her. There's nobody else in the world for me. I can't wait to see her. We really enjoy our time together. It doesn't mean, everything's perfect. We never fight. Of course we disagree. You put two human beings in the same square footage and you're going to have conflict and disagreement if people are being honest. But the way we work through it is just so much healthier.
Wow.
And, but that's a long journey. And I would say some transferable principles from that are, you're probably tempted to quit moments before your critical breakthrough. And I know she was tempted to quit, and there were times where, and again, I never really wanted to throw in the towel. I just didn't know how we were going to make it. It's like,
it's a different, not if.
She
had moments of if, but you had more of moments of how.
She was married to me. I was married to her. It's not fair. It's no contest, right? Like, I can understand why she would have moments of if, but I was more like, how? I didn't know, but I just believed that it would work, and miraculously it does. Like, you put God in the mix, and I think there are definitely some practical things, but I think it's a story for which Christ gets all the credit, because one of our marriage verses was probably taken horribly out of context. Ecclesiastes 4, a cord of three strands is not quickly broken, right? And so the third strand in a marriage, we always said, was Christ. I still don't know, and I've read the Bible more than a few times. Still don't know what that verse actually means, but, we usurp it for weddings, just like people take 1 Corinthians 13, which is really about church discipline, not about your wedding. But anyway, if you want to look at it, but you can use it at your wedding if you want. So I really believe Christ is the one who held us together and keeps us together. And it requires you to go to a level of forgiveness and a level of grace, and a level of, oh my gosh, it's me again, and my Savior still loves me, and He hasn't, given up on me. So how do I reinvent myself? How do I learn better patterns? How do I learn better behaviors? How do I self-reflect? How do we stop saying, hey, you, every time your marriage gets to the point where it's you're always or you never or whatever, it's you're in bad territory there. And how do you get into the, what do I need to do? And that's still a struggle, but like way less than it used to be.
Wow. So Carey, and I think we've talked about this on a lot of episodes. A lot of times, the thing that we're doing, we're not doing it from a bad heart, but we've got some bad habits.
Oh, yeah.
And, she's seeing some things in you going, you need to go see a counselor. And you're thinking to yourself, I don't need to see a counselor. You need to see a counselor. And then you see a counselor and you're like, wow, I need to see a counselor. And so, like, if someone's in leadership right now and their spouse is giving them, like, you need help or we're struggling and they're seeing attention, what would you say to them? What do you, I guess I'm asking, like, what would keep you from being aware that you couldn't see something that Tony saw? Does that make sense?
Yeah, I would say if somebody's struggling in leadership, go. Go. If your wife says you need counseling, you need counseling. And guess what? If your wife is wrong, you'll figure that out eventually.
Yeah.
And there's a 99% chance that she's right. There's, so on the 1% chance that she's wrong, okay, let God sort that out. But you go. There's one of my verses this year is sort of that verse from 1 Peter, as far as it depends on you. I can't control the other person. I can't control my staff. I can't control my life. I can't control people. But as far as it depends on me. And so you go, it's like come on. Guys, we've all taken our cars into the shop or our trucks into the shop and we're like, what is that sound, right? And you don't know whether that's a $5,000 sound or a $50 sound or a nothing sound. And sometimes it's a nothing sound. And you're like, oh, okay, well, that was great. That didn't cost me anything. Maybe they even did it for free, right? And then other times it's whoa, that's a $5,000 sound, but at least you know. And so if you go to the counselor, you will know. And I would say just go. And if you have I always say good Christian counselor. I am not convinced if our counselors weren't Christian that we would have made it. Christ had to be at the center of this. Right. Christ had to be at the center of this. And it's the same. And I just, that's how I've always referred people. It's like, well, you can go. I know sometimes people's insurance only covers, certain counselors or whatever. But I mean, your divorce is going to be expensive.
Right.
So,
People say that a lot to me. Oh, it's too expensive. And I say, it's cheaper than 2 houses.
Oh, yeah. Cheaper than 2 houses.
Not very
cheaper
pastoral,
than a divorce.
I don't guess.
No, it's wonderfully pastoral. I think so. But I'm not very merciful. So, No, I think, you look at that. And hey, that was a very real tension point. I mean, money's tight. Our kids were, nobody told me this as a parent, that the older your kids get, the more expensive they get. Did anybody tell you that?
Amen and amen. No, they did not.
Nobody told me that. So now you know. But, we just think, wow, we're out of the diaper stage, the playpen stage, it's going to be awesome. And then all of a sudden you're like, oh, there's sports and field trips and, clothes, and now they're outgrowing them every 6 months and the whole deal. So it was always, and I'm in ministry. I'm not in law anymore. So it's not like, money's growing on trees in the moment when we were starting out. So, sometimes the $50 on a date night is, even for the babysitter, even if you're just driving around the block or going for coffee, that was a real decision. But we began to see it as an investment. And once a year, we went away overnight without the kids, no matter what. And by the time our kids were 7, 8, 9 years old, some of our friends were like, wow, that's been 8 years since we've done that. It's one of the best investments. We also took a vacation. Now, sometimes it was a very economical vacation. It might cost us $1,000 or something. It's not Disney,
Right.
We're all flying business to Disney. No, it's $1,000 camping trip or whatever, or $500 camping trip. But that was really good and very restorative. And when you have that kind of time, either on a weekly basis or, you go away at least once a year together overnight, you remember why you fell in love. You take the modern day stress out of it. And, I've gotten a lot better at managing that. And I now teach leaders how to manage their stress because I want people to get their life and leadership back. Like, just because it took me a few years to figure that out doesn't mean it should take you that long to figure it out. You can shortcut this stuff, which is why one of the reasons I'm so passionate about helping leaders and building into leaders is like, think about all the ministry that goes undone because pastors have bad marriages. And you think, well, I need to do more ministry to get more ministry done. No, actually, if you work on your marriage, you'll have better ministry.
So prior to the counseling, Carey, would you say that was true about you? Do you think, you said that the counselor taught you that you performed for love. Were you performing for love at home, at work, at church, or both?
Oh, probably all of the above. I mean, I would just, I'll clean up the kitchen then, and I would expect that would fix everything. Or, look at me. It almost gets to martyr symptoms at some point where, you're kind of like, well, I did all the laundry, or I cut the grass, or I did this, and that nothing good ever comes from that. You learn. Now, I still cut the grass. I still do some laundry. She does laundry, not the grass. I'm just too obsessive about my grass. It has to be perfect. Really? But it's not a conflict point anymore. And honestly, I use some of that when there's pain at home. I use some of that as a form of escape. It's just easier to cut the grass than to solve your marriage. It's easier to open up your laptop than it is to go and have that discussion for the 5th time. So, eventually work was the problem, but then it became an escape. Because as a Christian, I didn't want to turn to alcohol. I'm certainly not turning to drugs. I don't want to turn to porn. I don't want to turn to those things, as false comforters. So, Carey Nieuwhof has said it, workaholism is the most rewarded addiction in the church. And I think that's absolutely true. So, there are times where I would just throw myself into work or, and I think for a lot of people who work in the ethereal field of ministry or even, management or leadership, the reason some of those things, like it could be a woodworking hobby or whatever, but you talk to leaders and they discover, hey, the grass was long, it's short. Nothing else in my life is that cause and effect. Hey, I didn't have a chair, I built a chair. Done. My car was dirty, now it's clean. So I would obsess over those things. Now, I still love a clean car, still love cut grass, but I do it for healthy reasons and with a lot more self-awareness than I used to.
And that's all the way you're talking. What's the self-awareness? What's going on in my marriage? What's going on with my life, my wife, my spouse? So, Carey, thinking about high-octane leaders, can you apply some of those principles as high-octane leader into your home? Do you see those two worlds colliding?
Yeah, I did. I've done a lot of reflection on that, and probably one of the mistakes I made until the last 5-7 years is you only have so much energy. Right. So I thought about time management. I got good at time management. But time management brings diminishing returns because the hours in any given day are fixed. You get 24. So you can manage. Think about it in money terms. If you're given $100 to manage, well, there's only so much to manage. It's $100. And, you can play with the rate of return or whatever, but you only have $100. You only have 24 hours in a day. And when your church is growing in triple digits or double digits or your life is getting more complicated, time management is going to bring you diminishing returns. So then there's energy management. And energy management is really different. And what I would discover is I would manage my time fairly well at work, but as it's kind of like your phone. It starts out with 100% in the morning. By 4 o'clock in the afternoon, you're at 43% or 18% or whatever. And I would show up kind of like my phone at home, and I'm just drained.
Great
and you kind of expect, now's my time to be served. I served all week, so where's dinner? And I'm just going to flop out and so what I learned to do is to try to save some of my best energy for home, my best energy for my kids, my best energy even for myself, for my devotion times. I'm getting way more done than I ever have gotten done in my life, and I've never had more time for devotions, more time for our marriage. It's like when you stop managing time and you start managing your energy and then you manage your priorities on top of it, it's like somebody gives you an extra day a week back.
Wow.
Because you eliminate so much of the clutter, so much of the clatter. Like, for example, I used to obsess when I led less than I lead today about my calendar and everything. I knew we had this podcast interview, but my phone buzzed and I'm like, oh yeah. We had this podcast interview, and I don't sweat as many details as I used to. I'm not in the weeds as much as I used to. And, I'm going to work really hard on the 5-hour flight back to Toronto tomorrow from LA. And, when I get home, I'm focused on her.
Wow. And so that's how you give her the best of you, not what's left of you.
That's a great way to say it. Yeah.
And so how do we do that? Because I know a lot of people say, hey, I've working 9 to 5. And my best energy is from 9 to 5. And so talk to them a little bit. How do you give them, because I know that I can struggle with that, to say, hey, I'm working during the day and I come home at night and I'm tired. I'm tired. I'm trying to, my phone is on, low energy. Talk to that a little bit. How do you do that? Because I love the whole idea, and I don't want my listeners to miss that. Time management versus energy management? How do you manage to give your spouse some of your best energy?
So one of the things is sleep more. Like just really practically, most Americans get 5 to 6 hours of sleep a night. Most high performers get
What about
7.
Canadians? Because you're from Canada, so
Yeah.
Are they
I
getting
assume
like 12?
there's 3 Canadians listening.
Yeah.
I don't think we're that different. I was on the other side of burnout. I now will sleep. Like, for example, tonight, I'm still kind of on East Coast time. After dinner, I'm going to go back to my hotel room and I'm going to go to bed. And I got a 2:30 wake-up call to catch a 6 a.m. flight in L.A. But that puts me back. See, I've already pre-thought this. That puts me back at 2 a.m. is 5 a.m. Eastern time. So that puts me back on my normal schedule so that I'll sleep on the plane if I need to. And I even have someone picking me up at the airport. So if I need to have another nap, that way when I'm home, I'm not running in like, oh, well, I've been away for 6 days. And so that is part of my plan. And I'm human, like I don't have infinite amounts of energy. So that's what I'm planning to do. I've already thought ahead. And sleeping and napping can make a big difference. So if you got a date night, you had a horrible day, and you're a napper, and I am, I'll be like, can I have 30 minutes? And I'll have a little nap, and it's like plugging your phone in. You're a lot better. Another thing you can do, a lot of it is what you say no to. Because every time you say yes to something, you're saying no to something else. And if you're saying no, if you're saying yes to too many speaking engagements, too much work at the church, too much, too many projects, too much side hustle, you're saying no to your family. You're saying no to your wife. You're saying no to downtime. You're saying no to a hobby. You're saying no to exercise. You're saying no to proper diet. So you gotta really manage your no's and your yeses really carefully. And so, I try to run my life through that filter. And then even honestly, diet makes a big difference. I did the Whole30 thing a few years ago, and I wish I had the discipline to stick to it. My weight hasn't really ballooned back up to where it was before I did the Whole30. So I'm still relatively fit. I cycle. But that carb crash, sugar crash thing, that's a real thing. And if you're eating more whole foods, more proteins and less carbs or slow carbs, you are actually going to feel better and you will have more energy for the day. So it's right, if you're living off donuts and caffeine, good luck, because you're going to crash. It's just, we wish it didn't work that way. The stuff tastes good, but those are some little hacks. Another thing is shut the notifications off your phone. Or be very strategic about the ones you allow. Most of the time, and this is bad because I miss most of the phone calls I still get, I just turn my phone on to do not disturb. That silent feature, that little moon thing on your iPhone, it's on a lot. And I can always call somebody back, but it helps me be more present in the morning. You notice my phone hasn't buzzed while we're here.
I love that.
Probably 5 messages on it, but
wow,
hasn't buzzed. I'll look at it later.
Wow, what is it? Deep work?
Deep work, focus, concentration, and then if you really focus at work, if you really do what you're best at when you're at your best, and you knock stuff off the list, you're done when you go home. So be done. Now, if you're in a launch season, great. I'm in a launch season right now. It's been a lot of extra hours just with something I'm launching on my blog. A lot of extra hours. But what a lot of people do is they say it's just a season, it's just a season. If your season has no beginning and no end, it is not a season.
Right.
It is the way you live. And so if you're justifying it by saying it's just a season, well, where's the beginning, where's the ending? So, my launch season has an end and it's Friday.
I love that.
Probably earlier.
Carey, you're not going to believe this, but I grew up as a farmer's son in Alabama.
I didn't know that.
Yes, and so my dad's a 5th-generation cotton farmer, but I watched my dad manage his energy. And one of the things was there's gathering season, so we knew that Dad was checked out during gathering season. We kind of knew that for a while, but we knew he'd check back in as soon as that was done. He would also come home from lunch. He would sleep for 20 minutes and jump up, and he was like a brand new man. Yeah. He was eating oatmeal way before anyone was eating oatmeal, but it's one of those things what he kind of modeled for me and our family was this idea of seasons and this idea of harvest and gathering. And so I think that's what you're talking about is how do we manage this? And so we're in a season right now. Nancy and I are in a season. We've told our kids, hey, Dad's gone a lot during September and October, but November, December, we're back. And they're great and they understand that. But it's when those seasons start to like you said, no beginning and no end, then we're in trouble.
Yeah, I think you're right. And the problem is because I love technology. All right. I'm one of those guys who gets up at 3:00 Eastern so I can order whatever product just came online. So I love technology. But we're in a season now where you have access to everything all the time. And I think you can live in a perpetual, cotton season. I don't know anything about cotton, but I think I know enough to say it is a season. It's not like you're going to have a farm that's producing cotton 12 months a year.
Exactly.
But a lot of us live lives like that, where we are trying to produce day in, day out, and you're not built for that. Like, look at the rhythm of Scripture. And I know we're a New Testament people, but, God intended you to spend a seventh of your life, or a third of your life, rather, sleeping, a seventh of your life Sabbathing, and resting. And then there's all these feast days thrown in. It's like there's a holiday all the time. And there are seasons in my life where I look at, a holiday Monday as an intrusion, not a blessing. And I've got to stay in the space where those are blessings, not intrusions. Right?
Well, that's powerful. I had someone else, talking to Robert, our producer, earlier, I had someone ask me about Andy Stanley. And they said this, and it just really hit me. They said, please tell me he's a good husband and dad. Please tell me that. Because they know he's a great communicator.
Yeah.
They know he's a great leadership guru. They know he's a great speaker. But because we live in this world of perform, we see a lot of our leaders crashing and burning and losing their families and losing their life and ultimately losing their ministry, the thing that they were trying to do best. And I was able to say to them, oh, yes, he's a great husband. He's a great dad. I remember him saying to our staff several times that when he started North Point Church, he says, God, I'm going to give you 45 hours a week. Whatever you can do with that, then do with that. Well, I think those of us who know Andy and know North Point Ministries, which you're a part of, would say he's done a pretty good job with that.
Yeah, he's done a really good job. And he and Sandra have a great marriage. And I mean, his kids love him and the whole deal. And I think that is true. But he's very disciplined with his time. And,
very much.
I don't know what his schedule is right now, but I know for years it has been Wednesday is study day and Thursday morning is study day. And, nobody gets on the calendar. Like, you better be a 5-alarm, burn down the house. And I adopted that's another thing I've done is I've got a fixed calendar. So when I'm not on the road, and I'm at home, I don't book meetings for Monday. I don't book meetings for Wednesday. I have to get my team has to get permission from me to book anything in those zones.
Wow.
Because that's when I write. And meetings have to fit in these prescribed slots. My podcast interviews have to happen within a certain window. And, occasionally you get a guest. It's like, okay, we got to, tail's not going to wag the dog. So you try to make it work. But they have to be exceptions to the rule. And a lot of us have no rules for our calendar. And that's why they always fill up with everything but our most important priorities. And so, Saturday has forever been a family day for me. And no ministry stuff gets on my calendar unless I put it there and it's mutually agreed upon. And there's a date night. And that's sacred, and et cetera, et cetera. So I think you really have to get into those rhythms, and really I think that's how God designed life. And you've got to do a 21st century version of it, but there are rhythms, and we've lost rhythm with our constant connectivity, and I think it's killing us. And I'm Mr. Connected. I love it, but it's got limits.
But you had to stop. I think as you're talking, Carey, I think what's just hit me is we want to be successful at home. We want to be successful at work. And I think what you're saying is those things are not mutually exclusive, that they actually help the other one happen.
Well, it's exactly what you just said, Ted. I mean, if you sacrifice your home and you're in ministry, there goes your ministry for a season, maybe forever. And then even, I was in law before I was in ministry. But even in law, okay, great. So you're wildly successful. You're making $1 trillion a year. You're arguing cases in the Supreme Court. Good for you. But your family hates you. Your wife's, you're on wife number 3, and you're in a house all by yourself. Driving some, fancy car that nobody cares about. So what? What kind of life is that?
Right.
Is that success? What profits a man or a woman if they gain the whole world and they lose their soul?
Absolutely.
At the end of the day, Rick Warren said it years ago, never put your identity in anything that can be taken away from you.
Wow. That's powerful.
Including your family. You think about it. I love your mission, to help marriages, and I'm all for that. But your identity isn't in your marriage.
Right.
It's not in your kids. Your identity is in Christ, and that can never be taken away from you. You know, so imagine yourself, you know, nobody calls anymore. Nobody, you know, you don't have a job. Bank account's a little bit lean. Who are you when all that's away? That is the question to ask.
That's powerful.
And if you can answer that one, and you can bring that to your marriage, and you can bring that to your work, and you can bring that to your leadership, I think that's a good reverse engineer.
Wow. Carey, one of the things we like to do with this podcast is we want to focus in on just one simple thing each week, one simple thing that people can take what they heard and say, okay, I can apply this. What would that be for you? Like if you could encourage our listeners to do one thing this week, what would it be?
My mind goes immediately to one thing. Every single day, have a meal with your spouse. That's it. Now, you got kids, have it with your kids in the room. That's fine, you know. But we did that. I led a very busy life, but one of the things I'm most grateful for looking back is we had dinner together almost every single night. And we made a few decisions along the way. There was never a TV in the living room. Well, there was briefly, but never in the kitchen, never in the bedroom. You know, now, you know, your TV's in your hand. I mean, basically your screen's in your hand. So that goes away. And just focus on each other. And so we're empty nesters now. It's amazing. It's fantastic. Like, it's so good. It's like date night every night. And she'll have a busy day at the law firm. I'll have a busy day in ministry, and we'll sit down and, you know, we usually make our food. I just prefer that. So we'll cook. And sometimes we cook together. Sometimes I'm doing it. Sometimes she's doing it. But we'll just sit down and we'll spend at least 30 minutes together. And that is rich. That is so, so rich. And I would do that. I would focus on that because you know what? Issues are going to surface. You're going to find out where you really stand. You do that, so that's 3.5 hours of quality time with your spouse over the next week. If you can do it for an hour, do it for an hour a day. And if you don't cook, then go out to a restaurant. And it can be Burger King if you need it to be, like wherever you need to be, but just I would suggest not. But, you know, focus on each other. You will very quickly get a state of the nation. You'll very quickly start to feel the feelings that are really there, including the good ones. and you're going to build a meaningful relationship where you keep short accounts.
Carey, I love that. And, you know, again, the thing I was so excited about you being here because I don't know of anybody that gets more done than you. I don't know anybody that seems more laser focused than you, and what God has used, you know, it's just what you're doing through your podcast has just absolutely exploded. But you did not sacrifice, your family for that. In fact, I think it's your family that helped create all that. And it's just such a blessing to be able to talk to you today.
Thank you, Ted. I hope not. I hope that's absolutely true. You know, God will let me know one day, but you know, I'm wildly in love with my wife and my kids, and you know, we're very thankful. It doesn't mean you're without challenges. Sure. But the other thing you get to when you organize your life well and you get time, energy, and priorities working in your favor is you have the time to deal with the crises. A lot of the time what happens is you're just so scattered and so like, that something comes up and you're like, stuff it. I'm not dealing with it. And if you've got the bandwidth to pray about it, to process it together, to deal with it, you know, another little hack. I used to be Mr. Technology. I still am. But I charge my phone 2 floors down from our bedroom.
Love it.
In the basement at night. Goes away about 9 o'clock at night. Just stays there till the next morning. People are like, what if something important happens? You know what? Someone will break into my house and wake me out of a dead sleep. And then I won't. Like, if somebody dies, I'll find out in the morning. You know, if it's that important, the police will come. Like,
for centuries, that's how people lived.
Exactly. You know, you're really not missing much. And, you know, you can look at your phone at 5 the next morning when you get up. It'll be fine.
Countercultural decisions, and that's okay, right?
Yeah.
Carey, thank you so much for being with us today.
Hey, thanks for having me, and thanks for having meaningful conversations like this.
Thanks,
appreciate it. Thanks, Ted. Thanks, Robert.
Ted, that was a great conversation between you and Carey Nieuwhof. And, you know, we're obviously talking about the idea of, you know, can you have a great marriage and a great career? And he really boiled that down well. And he says, yes, what we need to do is manage our energy, though, and not just our time. So, yeah.
I love, like, because I feel really passionate about my career and, still want to have a successful marriage. But I think for me, it's what's helpful is just like when you're at work, do the best you can. When you're not at work, have intentional time, basically, I think is like the best thing. Like for us, if we are at dinner together or we go to lunch together, like we, don't have our phones up. It's like, everything's put away. We're just like going to focus on this time together and be intentional about it. And I think that's what makes it possible to have both, to have it all, and then throw your hat in the air in New York City.
Is that a Mary Tyler Moore reference?
Yeah,
right there?
look at me.
Look at you.
Saw it on TV Land.
TV Land.
Well, I do love his idea of managing your energy and not your time. And I did love, he was talking specific.
Which is hard to do.
What?
Manage your energy. Like when he said that, I'm like, that's really, I get home from work and I feel like I have, the energy tank is at zero. And I love that he said, it's okay for us to take naps. Because I get home from work and I'm literally like, I'm going to go to my room and take a nap. Nobody talk to me.
Yeah, but he's talking. You're basically, we live 9 to 5 schedules, and he talked a lot about that when you're managing your energy and your time. And, he listed all those great things about, what you say no to, about putting your phone on Do Not Disturb, or, setting up your schedule so that, Mondays and Wednesdays you don't have meetings, all those kinds of things. And I did think, and I just wanted to verbalize this, that I did think, it crossed my mind, like, okay, that's great if you can do that. But if you're working retail or you're working in a cubicle or you're working, whatever, like sometimes those things aren't possible. And I just wanted to put that out there and just vocalize the fact that sometimes those things are ideals and not perfect solutions. And I will say, I've heard Michael Hyatt talk about this as well, that just because this might not be a perfect solution for everybody doesn't mean it can't be an ideal thing for all of us to shoot for. And what I mean by that is, okay, me personally, I cannot guarantee that I'll never have meetings on Mondays and Wednesdays. We're going to have meetings on Mondays and Wednesdays from time to time, but I can lay that out on my calendar and be like, this is going to be my goal. And it's something almost to shoot for, even though I might not be in Carey's position where I can absolutely make sure that happens every week. It's something to shoot for, and I'm going to get closer by having that on my calendar. Like, hey, my goal is not to have this happen on these days, or my goal is to put my phone on Do Not Disturb from this time to this time, because I'm going to get a lot further if I have that goal on my calendar than if I don't have anything at all, because, well, that's unreasonable for me.
Right. Well, we can spend our time reacting all day. I mean, I don't know about you guys, but I literally could just deal with my phone and emails all day long. And I think what he makes a great point is we have to control our calendars. Like we have to think that through. We have to make times to give our spouse not what's left of us, but the best of us. And it is managing that energy. And we've been traveling a lot the last couple of months. And
you and Nancy.
Yes. And I have been trying to think through, okay, how can we do this? Because I try to play, if Sunday's the Sabbath, that's when I play catch up a lot of times to go, you know what, you need to rest your body. You're getting old, dude. You need to slow down. But I think he's so right. And I had never thought about it in those terms of energy as much, but it is, again, not reacting in our very connected world, but being strategic.
Yeah, so there are obviously a whole lot of potential takeaways from this, and hopefully everybody's kind of figuring out what those takeaways might be just from your conversation with Carey. But I love how, we always like to boil things down. What's one simple thing we can do this week to begin to make sure that we not only have a great career, but also a great marriage? And the one simple thing for this week that Carey gave us was have a meal with your spouse every day this week. So every day, your goal is to have one meal with your spouse. And Carey said, hey, if you do that, that's a full 3.5 hours of hopefully quality, intentional, energy-filled time with your spouse this week. Yeah.
And somebody who has, busy teenagers, I think, wow, a meal together every day. That's probably not going to happen every day, but we have decided as a family, we've been intentional about that. One of the things we'll do is get the kids to say, and we'll say the high and low. What was your high and low today? And it is amazing what comes out from those little conversations. But, I think our encouragement is, hey, if you can't do it every day, make sure you do it a couple of days a week, because it really does matter.
That's awesome. Well, thanks, Ted, for bringing Carey onto the podcast. And thank you for joining us for the Married People podcast. We hope today's episode helped you realize that marriage is a little easier than you think. And if you enjoyed today's episode, we would love for you to subscribe to the podcast on iTunes and leave us a review on iTunes or wherever you're listening to your podcasts, because your review will help us make this podcast better. And finally, for more great resources to make your marriage better, check out Ted's book, Your Best Us, on Amazon, and check out our website, marriedpeople.org. That's where you can find our show notes for this episode and some links to what Carey Nieuwhof is doing, because he is doing some amazing things in the leadership space and in the family space. You'll definitely want to check out some of the stuff that he has for you as well. And then join us for next week's episode, where we'll be talking to Jim Burns about the question, can I really see my spouse in a more positive way? That's going to be an interesting conversation, and we can't wait for you to join us there. But until next time, I'm CJ.
I'm Afton.
I'm Ted.
And thank you for listening.